Welcome to the Business Spotlight podcast. My name is Kay Cote, and I'm your host for today's episode. And today on the show, I have Elina Santana, founder and CEO of Santana Residency Law, PA, as my guest. We're going to be learning about her journey to business ownership, best practices, and challenges that she's faced to give you that inside look to what it's like to build and operate a business. Welcome, Elina. So great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Kay, for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Yes, well, I'm very excited to dive in and learn all about your business. But before we do that, I want to share a little bit about you with our audience. And so take us back as far as you'd like, share a bit about yourself and how you got into business.
Okay, sure. So I was born and raised in Miami, first generation American. My parents are Cuban, so I'm Cuban American, born and raised in Miami, which means I'm more Cuban than American most days. Like Spanish is my first language, even though I was born in the States. And lived in New York and Boston for a little bit for undergrad and law school. Eventually made my way back home. So Miami is home. It's where I live and it's where I created my firm. But my firm is a law firm. It's an immigration law firm, and we are national. So we do practice everywhere in the United States. Immigration is all federal law, so we can practice anywhere, even though I'm licensed in Florida. And yeah, that's the small and big of what we do. As far as how I got into it, like I said, I'm first gen, and I mentioned that because it's important to how I got into immigration. There's always been an interest and a like there. And when I was in college, I actually volunteered helping out teaching some ESL classes, so English as a second language, and loved working with immigrant kids, hated teaching. So hence law school and going into immigration law. And I found my calling really early on, I think, unlike most lawyers, I'd say.
Oh, I dive into that a little bit. So, because I am sure when you're in law school, is it more of a general and then you find what part of law you're drawn to?
Yeah, so when you go to law school, they force you to take certain classes. No different than like a bachelor's, right? You have to take evidence, you have to take constitutional law, criminal law. There's some basic requirements most of your first year, some of your, well, all of your first year, most of your second year. And then you get some electives there at the end. But for the most part, people graduate with just kind of this general knowledge, but not actually practical knowledge on practicing. It's pretty rare unless you took maybe a clinic class or something like that where you got some practical knowledge, but it's pretty rare. And because you get this diverse kind of practice area experience, and you study for the bar, and the bar tests you on everything. Or on random topics. So you don't generally specialize like the way doctors do when they train and they're already getting specialty somewhere later on in their education. That doesn't happen with lawyers. You graduate being able to practice whatever you want, and then you're off to find what you're passionate about. And most attorneys fall into whatever their first job is and either get stuck there, or the lucky ones find something they love or are good at or are passionate about early. But there's a lot of unhappy lawyers out there, a lot of unhappy lawyers.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense, though, especially how you described like you all have to learn the same material and then it's like fall into a job, an internship, something, and then
Yeah,
yeah.
like immigrant law school taught me to think like a lawyer, but nothing I actually learned about the law is, well, not nothing, but almost nothing they taught me is particularly useful to my life now. Like immigration law is not one of the big topics they force you to take. It's not something you learn for the bar. So it's very different from, going to school for 3 years on this.
Yeah. So how did you find immigration law?
So, like I said, I had an interest in working with the immigrant community, both from my background and also, my time in teaching ESL classes. And my first year in law school, I started volunteering with a nonprofit in Boston, and I spoke Spanish. And so, really early on, they gave me maybe too much responsibility because I was one of the only volunteers that spoke fluent Spanish. And I started working on doing sworn statements for asylum cases, which are very sensitive things to do, all the like horrible stories from SILs, and it was a nonprofit, so you got some really, really, sad stories and really moving stories. And I kind of fell in love with it pretty early on. I was like, yeah, I had a feeling I was gonna love this work, and I did. And then by my second year, I was working part-time at an immigration firm. And so when I graduated, I already had some immigration experience under my belt before I even started practicing immigration law.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a really cool story. And like now that you have your firm, I'd like to learn about kind of like your like day to day, the role you play? Obviously you have like your attorney duties and so, but what does a typical week look like for you as a business owner as well?
Yeah, the business of law and the practice of law are two completely different things. And I know you run this podcast, you hear from a lot of business owners, but I really think attorneys are really terrible business people often. I don't think they think of themselves as law firm owners. When people ask me what I do, I default to I'm an immigration attorney, and I think other attorneys do the same thing. And I try really hard to, at least in my mind, say, I run and own an immigration law office, and that's really how I should be saying it. And there is a difference. There is a huge difference. So to answer your question, what does my day-to-day look like? Honestly, my role has shifted a lot over the years and very intentionally so. I spend most of my time these days on rainmaking and people building as far as managing and creating a team and bringing on the right clients, building the right relationships, making sure my team has what they need to do their best work. I still show up as a high level attorney, especially on complex strategy and cases that really need me specifically, but I'm not as in the weeds as I used to be on the legal side. And I think that's a healthy thing. I think it's a sign of a healthy firm. So I think it's what matters for growth.
Definitely. I mean, that's like a real golden nugget of this conversation because I've met, business owners across all industries and some of them come from a practice or a art or something and they're still associating like with the art rather than being the business owner. So I think that's a really positive shift.
Yeah,
And
I mean, listen, learning how to delegate, how to trust your team, how to step back, that's not laziness. That's how you scale.
Mhm.
If the firm only works when I'm in the room, then I haven't built a firm. I built a job, and nobody wants a job.
True. Now, tell me about your team. You mentioned a team. So, how many team members do you have? And is there also, do you have an ownership structure with other owners or is it solely you?
I don't. So it's solely me. I used to be in business with a partner, but I bought him out at some point, and now it's just me. So I'm the sole owner. And no business partners, no outside investors. It's my house. I built it. I run it. I'm responsible for every decision that comes out of it. And that's by design. I really wanted to build something that reflected my values from the ground up. And you really can't do that by committee. So we're about 17 people strong right now. That includes some associate attorneys and a full support team as well. So we're small enough to move fast, experienced enough to handle complex cases, but not huge. Still have that personal touch.
Nice. Yeah, that is a nice size too. And when you look at your week, your like working in the business versus on the business, you mentioned you're more working on like you're not as in the weeds. So what does that split look like on average if you're working in versus on your business?
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned, that's why I self-describe as CEO, which I think most attorneys don't, right? I very much focus on running the business, not being in the business. When I say I'm part of high-level strategy discussions, that means, I have a bi-weekly meeting with my team to talk about complex cases if they need my help. Or they'll walk into my office and maybe have a quick discussion about a strategy point, but that's it. There are no cases in my office assigned to me. Everyone else's, all the cases have a primary attorney that's not me. If anything, I'm the secondary attorney and I'm there as like senior counsel, if that makes sense. But I really don't do most of that hands-on work. I'm only involved when it comes to the big picture decision making on strategy. So, time split, I would say I spend more of my time rainmaking and business building and growing relationships than anything else. And then I spend a good chunk managing. And that's probably, I'd say, like maybe a 60-30 or 55-35 kind of split with like that last 10% being practicing.
Okay. Okay, incredible.
Did I add that up right?
I think so, yeah, because you left off enough for the
Said like 60
10%.
30. That's 90%. Yeah, I did. That
And
that
then
was intentional. I wanted to be like 10% like actually like strategizing and there's always exceptions. There's always clients that, you want to handle or a case that I'm like, I really love that case. I want to be the one that goes to court, like this morning. I was actually at a case this morning for a client that I really wanted to handle. And that's cool. I can still do that, but none of it is necessary. Like my team is more than capable of doing it. I trust them to do it. When I do a case, it's because I have an interest, not because I have to be the attorney on the case. So.
Definitely. Now, are there any parts of it, like any of the hats you wear as CEO that you wish you weren't doing, that you wish you could offload?
Ooh, probably some of the management things as far as having those meetings about KPIs or some of the sales meetings or some of the marketing meetings. I think I would love to hand off to a COO. And so for me, that's the next big position to fill at the firm, you know.
Okay, okay. So a hiring of a COO is that's kind of
Right.
the
Someone
goal.
operations focused because I do love operations. I can handle it, but it's not my forte. Like I really am more visionary than I am ops. So I do the ops now, but I think someone else might be much better at it if I find someone that's their love and that's their passion and that's their fit. So for sure, as we grow further, that's going to be the next big hire, I think, at the firm.
Oh, incredible. Now, is that something that you're looking to do in a certain amount of time, or is it as somebody comes along?
Hopefully in the next year or two. Hopefully. I don't think it'll last much longer than a year, but we'll see, right? Growth matters too, finances matter too. So
Definitely. Now, how do you go about hiring, or how do you find that person to fill those shoes?
yeah, so for us, hiring is culture first, always culture first. Um, we're really big on finding people who are the right fit for our team. I read the book Good to Great, which everybody's heard of, but one of the core ideas that really stuck with me always was about getting the right people on the bus and then getting the right people into the right seats. And that's kind of how I go about hiring. Like, I'll always hire a superstar, even if I don't even know where I'm going to put them. Skills can be taught, but culture fit, chispa, as we call it in Spanish, chutzpah, if you want a different word for it, that's much harder to build after the fact. And so someone who's an amazing culture fit can be taught, and I'm good with that. So I'm always about finding those right people. We use a lot of assessments. We do a lot of questionnaires. Some of it is some gatekeeping, but really more it's a starting point for a conversation. Do these person's values align with ours? Will they bring something that strengthens the team? Do they understand how our team functions? And our result is we have a team that's genuinely loyal. We have very low turnover, high trust. I have people who care about the outcomes of the cases of our clients. And I don't think that happens by accident. It happens because I really invest in culture, and that's really important to me before anything else, almost. And so we've grown a lot of people into some of the positions they're in over time. If for no other reason than I'll hire someone. Like I hired someone as a receptionist years ago. And instantly, like within 3 months, I was like, oh, you're so much more capable than a receptionist, And she had been a receptionist for years at somewhere else. And I was like, why are you still a receptionist? And right away she started growing with the firm. And like I said, skills can be taught, but being that culture fit and having that chispa and that chutzpah is not something you can teach. So hiring for that to me is the most important thing always, and within our core values.
Definitely. Like that makes so much sense too. It's another golden nugget for other entrepreneurs too, is thinking about culture first, skills. Like you
Yeah.
said, skills can be taught. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
so, yeah.
And we have core values in the firm.
hmm
And our core values, I always tell people the core values are not just a pretty sign on the wall. They really are ingrained in everything we do. If I have a tough decision to make, I'll ask, well, what answer is going to align with our values, right? And I go back to my list, and I'm always pulling up that core values list, and how we defined them, and even, our assessments for our employee assessments, for their reviews, all of the questions are built around our core values. Like, does this person, here's how we define this value. Here are examples of that value. Are they doing this? How are they rating on this? So everything we try to align with those core values that we all set. And we did set them as a team. It was actually a big team building activity years ago. So obviously what I thought mattered, but we did actually have a big, um, session where we all met together for a whole day and brainstormed what we thought our strengths were and what our passions were. And that's how we came up with the firm's core values.
Ah, very cool. That's
Yeah.
that's a great way to team build. And when I talk to business owners, everybody's going through something at some season.
Yeah.
So it could be like a new chapter, a new challenge, A new level. So what is something you're growing through right now that's demanding a lot of you?
So are we talking on the business side or personally or?
It really can be whichever. I was gearing it towards business, but it can
Okay.
be any aspect of life.
I mean, listen, without going political, there's a lot of political changes going on. We are immigration attorneys, so I would say the constant flux of what we do is a challenge.
Hmm.
My team having to deal with constant changes and how things happen, and the stress of clients being stressed and calling us about the last minute changes, and the advice we gave yesterday is no longer the advice we'll give today, and it'll change again tomorrow, and that constant flux is really difficult to deal with. I think it can wear on the team quite a bit. It definitely wears on the clients. And so being able to be adaptable and being able to accept that change is a constant and we embrace it, that idea is I think the biggest challenge for us right now is not to get bogged down by it, but just embrace every change as something that's not going to slow us down. It's going to shape us to be better advocates and keep a positive mindset on things.
Yes, that also, yeah, that's very, I understand. Yep, I totally get that. Without saying a lot of words, yes, I get that's, yeah, that's got to be so challenging right now. And so like looking at the future of the business, where you want to go, where do you see your company in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so we right before COVID happened, I was about to open four more offices, like physical offices. And then, the world changed overnight for all of us. And I never opened those physical offices because honestly, they became unnecessary. We went from clients wanting a physical office to come meet with us at to everything being so virtual and Zoom based and all that. And so we really continued to grow, but without the other physical offices. So our expansion did happen, it just didn't happen physically. So I have thought about opening some other physical offices, but honestly, I probably won't do it at this point. It doesn't make a lot of financial sense. So where do I see us growing is probably into more areas that we've yet to tap, and I mean that geographically, not in types of matters. Really, geographically, there are certain areas of the US I'd love to do more. We're very East Coast heavy and Chicago heavy, not as much West Coast or, Midwest as much. So I'd love, especially in the South, I'd love to get more reach into like Louisiana, Texas. Those areas tend to be popular, but we haven't really tapped into them or the West Coast. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it'd be great to have you here in Texas.
Yeah. I mean, we do take a lot of cases and we have a lot of cases in Texas, but I wouldn't put it, at our top five or six places that we represent people. So,
Definitely lots of immigration in
oh yeah.
Austin and Texas.
Yeah.
It's so what does that unlock for you personally when you get there? Like when you make this next season of Reach?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I my life is already very different now than it was a couple of years ago. Growing the business has really allowed me more time to be passionate about the things I want to be passionate about. And growing the business more could only do that more for me on a personal level. And on a big impact level, growing, sure, we make more money, but it's not just about making more money. It's more impact, it's more legacy, it's more changing of people's lives. So, growing the business is only a positive thing for us, for me, for the world. So, yeah.
Mm, wonderful. So now I want to get into some fun Q&A questions. These are our
Okay.
rapid fires. So
Okay.
feel free to answer very top of mind. There's four of them.
Okay.
All right, question number one is what is a piece of advice you have for other business owners?
Ooh, niche down before you think you're ready.
That's a good one. I need to take note of that one. Oh, uh,
Yeah, that fear of narrowing your focus is almost always bigger than the actual cost of narrowing your focus. So,
that is true. That is true. Now, second question is what is a key to success for you?
trust, definitely trust. Yeah. Build it
Mhm.
slow, protect it fiercely, and never compromise it.
I'm gonna write that down. Respected fiercely. Uh, and number three is it could be a book or a podcast, just anything that you're into right now.
Ooh, anything I'm into, but you want books or podcasts?
Anything like media wise or
Oh,
learning.
so totally off topic. Go look up the podcast Ologies. I love that
Ollie.
podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, Ologies. Not about business at all. So totally off topic. It's about the study of blank. And so it's like if you think of ology, like mythology or, whatever, everything is ology at the end. And so that each episode is like on some completely random topic. But I feel like it opens my mind to things I hadn't even thought of. Like I was listening to one about mushrooms. It was like an entire hour about like the study of mushrooms. And I was fascinated by how they grow, what this works. And like I said, totally off topic, but it's a really fun, still educational, but really funny and fun podcast. So highly recommend it if you're looking for something. If you're like me and do nothing but listen to self-help and business books, it's a nice break from that.
That sounds cool. I know like the Mycelium network is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. The other good one is what's this things that you had to know or things you got to know. I'm sure I'm messing it up, but it's another one of these like about random topics. So,
Nice. Those
yeah.
are nice, especially to break up the day or
Oh yeah.
like give your brain a massage.
Oh yes.
All right, and the final question. This is a fun rapid fire one. If I gave you a bit of magic dust and you could sprinkle that on one aspect of your business to rapidly improve it, what would it be?
Systems. I want everything to be as well documented as possible. I want to replicate everything so the firm can run at full capacity with or without me on any given day. And I'd love to say we're there, but we're not. I feel like it's always an adventure and we're close, but there's always more to build. Systems.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing those. This has been such a fun conversation. How can people connect with you and your company online?
Sure. You can look us up at srlawpa.com. You can find me on any of the social medias with my name, Elina Santana, Elina M. Santana, or under the firm Santana Residency Law. We're on YouTube, we're on Insta, we're on the formerly known as Twitter, whatever they call it now. We're pretty much everywhere. But you can always give us a call too, 305-916-4800.
Well, thank you so much, Alina, for our final question today. What is most inspiring to you today?
Ooh, I hate to be cheesy, but I think I'm gonna be. I think the families. I was on a plane 2 days ago, and coincidentally, the flight attendant was someone we had represented years back. And he was like, "Do you remember me?" And he was like telling me about his life. And, every time I like bump into someone at Costco that we represented a while back, that happened to me recently too. Every time I get a photo of like a family at the airport, like we finally got to go home and visit, or we get a text about someone who can't stop crying because they got approved, that's the whole thing. That's everything. It's inspiring every day, and especially in the world we live in where there is so much doom and gloom and bad news in immigration and in general. It's really nice to be inspired every once in a while by the difference we make. So,
That's super cool. That's, I think, across the board for business owners, that impact that we build
yeah.
is what really matters. And it sounds like you're doing incredible things. So I really appreciate your time for sharing your story with me today.
Thank you so much for having me on.